Hello, viewers. This is Dr. Qamar Cheema, and you are with me on my new English channel, which is The New Word with Dr. Cheema. And I'm honored to have my friend, Mr. Sumit. Thank you very much, Sumit, for joining us at my new YouTube channel.
Thank you, Mr. Cheema. Thanks for the invitation, which is much appreciated. And congratulations for your new initiative. And I wish you all the best. And I'm very sure that that is going to touch new heights world over.
Thank you very much for these best wishes. So let's start. And the question today, or the topic of today's discussion, is that Prime Minister Modi is in UAE. So how do you see Prime Minister Modi's visit in UAE? What are basically the underlying factors? Either he's there to condole for the former president, or he's there for damage control, which was done during the Nupur Sharma incident, or do you think that this is about improving the bilateral relations and talking about the I2U2? So, what is agenda basically, Sumit Saab?
Dr. Cheema, thanks very much. Thank you very much for inviting me on your channel. When we talk of Prime Minister Modi, he's a person or a personality with multiple dimensions. It's always difficult to attribute one particular reason to a political genius like him, and it's equally difficult for a person of my stature to really, think and get through what is going on in his mind and to be able to predict his mind. That's the caveat I'm putting in, before my argument. Now, what Prime Minister Modi is there, it is business as usual. So there are 2-3 things on the agenda. First, we have to increase our bilateral ties with UAE, because UAE is our third biggest trading partner, And by 2030, as we discussed last time in your other channel, that we targeted to a business around $100 billion with UAE. Now, with I2U2, UAE is our anchor, which cements our legacy in the Middle East, which is a very important thing for us, because increasing India's stature in the Middle East or Arab world, UAE is a very important friend, ally, or a partner there. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is unfortunate demise of the former president, Mr. Khalifa, President Khalifa, and now Prime Minister Modi passing by while coming from Germany, stopping when there and meeting the current president. And the current president and the royal family coming to the airport to receive Prime Minister Modi is again a depart from the traditions what they have. They usually do not do it for anybody else. So they came in, so that means UAE, the royal family and the president also values Prime Minister Modi is going there, because he has he has broken the protocol wherein they will not go to an airport to receive a foreign dignitary. Here in this case, they have done that so that the meeting could happen. And then the trade, then personal condolences were there, trade was there, ties were there. And answering your question in particular, Dr. Cheema, is that, that Nupur Sharma incident is kind of a thing of the past, because BJP has issued a statement, Nupur Sharma ji has issued a statement, and the government of India has issued a statement. When all the 3 concerned people in the triangle have issued their statements, I think there's nothing more to contemplate on that. And, if we are talking about this, we are beating a dead horse. Reason, after that, the Iranian, foreign minister was here, BRICS happened, G7 happened, China's high-level security dialogue happened. Now, if you see the kind of reception Honorable Prime Minister gets in UAE, so I don't think these all things are even in the remotest of the radar. They're not. I mean, forget the impact of it, Dr. Cheema. They're not even in the radar of on the bigger scale of things. So that is a thing of the past. So there's nothing called damage control. There is no need for damage control, because, and incidentally after that I2U2 was announced. So I2U2, INSST, G7, all the things happening around is business as usual. Things are moving on. India is fermenting its partnership and legacy in the Middle East. That is the news. The Middle East is changing. If you see the relations developing between Saudis and Israelis, if you see the UAE and Israel almost normalizing their relations, if you see the amount of pressure that is going to be put on Pakistan when President Joe Biden will be in the region and when he'll be visiting Saudi Arabia and Israel and all, and then because there is a pressure on Israelis somewhere down the line, there's a Russian pressure on Saudis somewhere down the line to recognize Israel. Now, the moment you put that pressure, and if Saudis kind of formally recognize Israel, immediately the ball will be in Pakistan's court. What is their position vis-a-vis Israel? Now, it's a dichotomy for Pakistan. If they follow the Saudi line because you need their money, you need the support for them, then the stand of Kashmir fundamentally stands validated, is kind of taken a toss, because you can't have one stand for Palestine and one stand for Kashmir. So Israel, a recognition of Israel is going to be a big diplomatic hurdle, which the Republic of Pakistan is soon going to see. And India is doing what it is in its best interest. We are fomenting our relations, allies. As we discussed earlier, Dr. Cheema, we have multi-level relations and ties across the world, and we are fomenting new alliances. I mean, you asked me a question, what is the future of the Quad? I said there will be multiple Quads. And so if you see these new alliances coming up, we are doing what is in the best interest of the Republic of India, what is in the best interest of our people, and what is in the best interest of the global economy and global peace and stability.
Well, that is fine that India is having good bilateral relations with the Middle Eastern countries. But at the same time, how do you think that India is balancing relation even with the Iran and with these Arab partners of India? Don't you find that this is very difficult? On one hand, India is pushing, or India is wants to get a hold over the Chabahar port, or getting this to the north-south corridor. So do you think that there is somehow a sort of a pressure on India, either from Iran or from these other partners, or do you think that India is in a position where it can just help bring the Arabs and the Persians together? How do you see the Indian role with these two opposite extremes? I think have lost the contact with Mr. Sumit Peer. Yes, can you hear me now? Mr. Sumit, can you hear me now?
I lost you, Dr. Cheema, for a while. Can you appreciate if you can repeat again, sir?
Yes. So I was just talking that since the Arabs and the Persians, Iran and the Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they are poles apart. How do you think that India can balance between both? On one hand, India. Are you getting me? Are you getting me? Are you with me, Mr. Sumit? I think we have certain connection problem right now. Either it's with me or with Mr. Sumit Peer, but since this buffering is on his side, it seems it's his problem. So we still have to face this. Are you there, Mr. Sumit? Are you there? I think we lost the contact there. There was some shortage of, there was electricity outage there. So maybe because of that, he's unable to join, or as if he joins back, we will start it again from here. Let me ask him to come back. So since I was having a discussion with Mr. Sumit that how Prime Minister Modi's visit in UAE is in a position to balance the Arabs and the Iranians, because both of them are at poles apart. Both keep competing with each other. Mr. Sumit, are you with me now?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Apologies, there was some interruption.
That's fine. I was just recalling what we were having. So my question again is that since Prime Minister Modi is in UAE, and we have realized that the Arabs and the Iranians, they are at poles apart when it comes to the regional politics. India wants Chabahar port to be operational. India wants a north-south corridor to be operational. So that is basically supporting, and then that is basically supporting the Iran to come back or to give them a lifeline. So how come do you think that India can balance between the Arabs and the Iranians, or do you think that India is in a position to bring them closer, or to start or initiate a dialogue between the Arabs, particularly the GCC and the Iran? Do you find any problem here?
Well, Mr. Cheema, if you look at, it's not only a question of Arabs and Iranians. If you look, we are doing business with Americans, we are doing with Russians, we are doing with Chinese. We have relations with Palestine, we have relations with Israel, we have relations with Arabs, we have relations with the Iran. So if you see the ITU2 is a fantastic example because in that we see Indians, when India represents predominantly a Hindu country, but all other religions are also represented by India. Then we have Jews, which are Israelis, we have Christians, and we have Muslims, which is UAE. So if these four can get together and make I2U2 alliance, which is one of the first of its kind. Now today we are in BRICS, we are in Chinese high-level discussion or dialogue, whatever you call it, and we are also in G7. So India is kind of really, I would say, setting the benchmarks for the diplomacy in the world, Prime Minister Modi, especially if you see the resilience of Indian diplomacy in last 7 years and compare it with around 10, 15 years back and compare last 8 years of Prime Minister Modi as 7 years, you will see a phenomenal difference, Dr. Cheema, because the way relations are evolved and somehow, somewhere down the line, there is not a platform, there's not a forum where India is not present. Now, putting India, for example, if you look at I2U2, what is the whole idea of putting India? A lot of people thought that if you put India, it is seen anti-Iran, but India has great relations with Iran. So if you're putting I2U2, if you are putting in I2U2 India, so you are replacing French and British, who have been traditionally the stakeholders after America in the Middle East. So French and Britishers were replaced by India. That's point number one. Secondly, India is the only country which can help balance relations between Saudis and Iranians. What do Iranians want? Iranians want a little bit of relief in their sanctions to sell oil. Let's not forget, Dr. Cheema, Russians have sold around $150 billion of oil as we talk, and there are more and more people lining up for the Russian oil. That led to the fall of oil prices of Saudi Arabia by around 12%. And MBS Sahab thought that he will bring the barrel to 150. Now, when at 120, he is not able to sustain. I think it's 105 to 108. That is what is fluctuating to. So there, India played a constructive role, which helped to balance the oil prices in the world. For having a leverage, I'm using the word leverage over the Russia, West is literally today banking and looking forward to India. Now, India is very close to West. India is close to the Middle East. India is also close to the Russian-Chinese bloc. So if you look at India, the emergence of a global responsible power, or what we call as a Vishwa Guru, has literally happened in last 3-4 these events which happened recently. So it is that if your diplomacy is based on, your interests and the interests of your partners, I don't believe any religious, any demographic divides or any ethnicity can stop you. But if your foreign policy is based on my interest and my religion, then obviously you limit yourself. You literally shut yourself down in a box. I mean, unfortunately, that is what has happened with Pakistan. If you see today, the relations of India has with the Middle Eastern world, and it has with the the Americans, it has with the Britishers, it has with the French, and it has even with the Africans. And if we go to the Russia, I mean, everybody knows what the thing is all about. It's all out in the open. So that India's independent foreign policy for the benefit of India, and not to be bound by any demographic divides or any religious divides or any ethnicity divides, has paid the demand. And in our relations with the world, we also think what is in their interest, what helps them, what works in their good interest. If honestly, Dr. Cheema, if Iran and Saudis come to a bit of peace and both recognize Israel, I mean, UAE has recognized Israel. If Saudis recognize Israel, right, which is not a distant possibility today, Iran can close their eyes on Israel, close their eyes. I mean, I don't see you, don't see me. And if Iran and Saudis kind of mend their fences, Yemen, Syria, and Houthi rebels will be a story of the past. Then the whole of Middle East can be a very, very stable player, and India can play that important role to stabilize the Middle East. Because what French could not do, what Britishers could not do, the world is eyeing on India to do that role. That is why we have taken the center seat.
Do you think, Mr. Sumit, that India can play this role where thousands of years of animosity between the Arabs and the Persians, you can bring them on the table and they can move on? And one more thing, do you think India is in a position even to bring Israel and Iran on table? Are you overestimating your position, or you're trying to oversimplify the rivalry or the animosity between the Iranians and the Israelis?
You see, Mr. Cheema, today the world is driven by what I always say, the macroeconomics, MACR, or macroeconomics drives global politics. A lot of things which are happening around us are driven by macroeconomics. I mean, as much as we want to negate it, as much as we say it doesn't work in the practical world, but if we do the numbers, we go back deep down, if we deep dive into it, we'll come to this conclusion. So for the world, and if we look at the inflation happening, if we look at the Russian-Ukrainian war, if we look at the food crisis the world is facing, if we look at the inflation, if we look at the enigma called China, if we even today in G7 there's a mention about the China. For the first time there's a mention about the China, and there's also mention that China cannot change the things unilaterally. There are two important things which happened in G7 today. So with all these things happening, and then literally that $600 billion initiative to build infrastructure world projects in the world, where US will contribute 200 billion, and the rest of the G7 countries will contribute 400 billion. So as we discussed earlier, this one can be even in trillions. So with these things changing world over, it is time for all sane republics of the world. You might be Islamic country, you might be a Christian country, you might be a secular country, but what is your utmost thing which matters to you is, Mr. Cheema, is the welfare of your people, your sustainability, your economy. Once you are stable, your borders are secure, your economy is secure, you don't have food problems, your people's futures are secure, then you can look things beyond that. But first, if you look at the Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy, you have to literally cover those 4 quadrants. So before you go into the last, that is self-actualization, and go beyond that, first 4 quadrants have to be covered. That is the responsibility of every stable and sane nation. With due respects to Iran, sir, you look at the state of economy, it is pretty bad. I mean, Iran cannot become like Turkey. Iran cannot become like Turkey. Iran has natural resources, but the economy state is not good at all, though the population is small. So, and incidentally, out of 193 nations, 103 are already approaching the World Bank. In the UN, 103 are already approaching the World Bank for the bailout. Sorry, IMF for the bailout. Things in the world are not good. Economic forecast of the world from 4.5% growth is reduced to 3.5. The growth forecast of the Europe from around 3.5 is reduced to around 2.3 now. Overall, except India, nobody will grow at 8.5%. Even the Chinese forecast is reduced to another 1.5%. Now you see the sanity of the Iranian diplomacy. INSST would not have been possible without the Iranian cooperation. And after the Nupur Sharma fiasco, the Iranian foreign minister was here, and this did not even figure in the official discussions. And within 2 or 3 or 4 days, we have seen the first cargo movement from Russia to Mumbai. So the world is realizing, Dr. Cheema, that the way you look at economy, the way you look at your national security, the way you look at your food safety, security, and interest of your people have to be seen in a different paradigm. And if I have the liberty, I may say with all the conviction at my command, India has shown the world how to look like this. We have been able to do, we have been able to kind of conjoin the paradigms which were unthinkable and beyond the human reach and intellect to, join with each other. I mean, that is what we have shown to the world. So there's a lot of things to learn. I'm not boasting about being an Indian. I am definitely proud. I'm confident. My confidence is my virtue. My confidence is my armory, and I believe with confidence and conviction at the command, with the purity of thought and emotion and my intentions, anything is possible. Nothing is easy. Nothing is impossible, sir.
Well, one last question which I have for you, Mr. Sumit, is in the end, can you tell us that what are the core interests of India in the UAE? Or particularly if you just can highlight the bilateral relations between India and UAE, how much they are important, and how do you think that on which areas both the countries normally working?
I mean, if you look at India and UAE, to begin mathematically, number 3rd trading partner, UAE, been in 20, 30, $100 billion trade. I2, U2, when we talk of I2, who is our anchor in the Middle East? It is UAE, right? Relation normalization between the Arab world and the whole of the world, who is the anchor? Again, is UAE. Now, if you look at the number of Indians which are employed there, again, it is the UAE. And if you look at our tradition of our relations, it's the UAE. And if you look at the stability of the Middle East, it's UAE. And there are a lot of things which are happening in the UAE. If you see the amount of economic reforms or the liberalization which UAE has done, they have changed a lot of things. Now, a lot of things are allowed in a UAE which were not allowed 2-3 years back. Even the Saudis are changing. Saudis have brought in a lot of reforms now. MBS is building a lot of reforms now. And again, people realize, Dr. Cheema, that if you look at the UAE, only Abu Dhabi has the oil. All 6 other -6 provinces or the states which come together do not have oil. So what is Dubai? Dubai is a trading port. Whom does Dubai compete with? Dubai competes with Singapore and Hong Kong. So the people who run Dubai, they know they are competing with Singapore and Hong Kong when it comes to trade. Though ease of doing business and all, Dubai is pretty good. But Abu Dhabi might have the tail, other 6 do not have the oil. So when we look at all these things, the economics of the place is driving the things. When we are the biggest market in the world, and honestly, China has thrown a lot of things in our lap. I'll be very candid with you. The way they did with the Chinese virus and the debt trapping and that economic aggression, economic terrorism, and the way they have literally under President Xi Jinping or the General Secretary Xi Jinping, they have literally messed up their diplomacy. They have literally, dismantled their aura in the global politics. That has been an add-on for the India. The world is today talking of delinking of the supply chains from China. The world built the supply chains with China. Now the same world is talking of delinking of the supply chains from China and building to India. World is today talking of we have to counter China in infrastructure projects. Let's build a scope of a $600 billion fund. The world is talking that I know who are Zeti in my bedrooms and drawing rooms. So that world distancing itself from China automatically brings up the stature of the India. Because if you look at the top three economies, it is by PPP, it's China, it is United States, and it's India. So if this China goes out of the gear, so out of the top three, one goes out of the gear, automatically the second and the third are going to get benefited. But if you look at United States, it has kind of peaked. It's already running in its best. So we, by the virtue of the position we have and our ability and the geopolitical situations, we are bound to get out of the fiascos. Sorry to use the word fiascos, which the China has created. So in a way, what China has done has not helped China, but has definitely helped us.
Let's see how it goes, as India is very confident in connecting countries which are poles apart, either in terms of ideology or either in terms of interest. It seems a very ambitious agenda. Yes, please.
Sir, there was a time when nobody could see North Germany and South Germany, East and West Germany can talk. So there was a time nobody thought you could go in a plane and land in Palestine and land in Tel Aviv. So there are a lot of things which we have seen in the world which were kind of unthinkable in some point of time, but with due amount of intent and interest and the purity of your thought and the intentions, I think everything is possible. Nothing is easy. Nothing is impossible. Let's be optimistic and our confidence be our driving force. Be the fuel in the car.
Let's see that how much confidence and the actual realities on the ground. Definitely, India has a lot of potential and capability, and how India can materialize that capability and could be a good force for the entire region, not for itself, including other countries, including Pakistan. That will definitely make a case. Thank you very much, Mr. Sumit P, for your comments and for your time for my new channel. Thank you.